Grubauer back in net, and I get to wear the hat, but unfortunately only for one segment of today's episode of Locked on Kraken.
You are Locked on Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Kraken, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single weekday. My name, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked on Kraken. Zame had you covered for Friday with the trade deadline, but I will be reviewing it, recapping what happened, including you'll hear from Ron Francis. And I'll put the hat back on, our game-winning hat, because Philipp Grubauer, we saw him back in net. We knew it was a high chance we would with the back-to-back against, we saw against Philadelphia and Washington. So we'll break all of that down. Let's start, though, with the deadline recap. So we saw an exit of Brandon Tanev, Yanni Gourde, exactly what we expected there. But we also saw the departure of Oliver Bjorkstrand, and that was a tough one. That was a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, myself included. But, that's how the cookie crumbles. The Seattle Kraken, though, did get 10 draft picks throughout all of the different trades. And this is really signaling, as we'll hear shortly from Ron Francis, that the Seattle Kraken they have resigned, that this isn't the year. We heard from Ron Francis that injuries impacted what he thought this team could do this season. I think it's a convenient thing to say in hindsight. Of course, the injuries did not help. I think really the Jordan Eberle injury, I think you can lean on most. You don't expect to, after you name your captain, to then not have your captain for an extended period of time with what, as we've talked about on this podcast, was a really unique, a little bit of a random injury with not a lot documented on the recovery process. So we will hear from Jordan Eberle. He did get a goal over the weekend. We'll break that down. But the Seattle Kraken were able to pick up, I'm going to read this off because it's quite a list that the Kraken have collected here. The Seattle Kraken, in their trades, collect for this coming draft a first rounder, 2 second-round picks, this is what the Seattle Kraken have in the upcoming drafts with regard to draft capital. In 2025, that's the upcoming draft, they have 1 first rounder, 2 second-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, a 5th round, and a 7th round pick. For next NHL entry draft in 2026, they have their first round, 2 second rounds, a 3rd round, 2 4th rounds, a 6th and a 7th round. And in 2027, they pick up 2 first round picks. They have 2 first round picks, 2 second round picks, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th round pick. So that's the draft capital. When you hear Ron Francis shortly, that's what he's referring to. Now, we also, have to look a little bit ahead, and there's a great article, I believe it's Tim over at the Seattle Times that wrote this, as opposed to Kate Shefty, that is. So when you look at the restricted free agents after this season, there will be some decisions to make regarding Kaapo Kakko, Ty Kartye, and Riker Evans. Unrestricted free agents, just Josh Mahura, who we know that Dan Bylsma has been pretty high on. Unrestricted agents beyond this season, something to look at: Jordan Eberle, who again is our captain. We'll hear from him later on the show. Jaden Schwartz. I'm very curious to see what the Seattle Kraken do with Jaden Schwartz, especially if it's another down year next year for the Seattle Kraken. Eeli Tolvanen, and then Jamie Alexiak. who has been in conversations regarding trades even as recent as this year, this month. Unrestricted free agents moving forward in after 26-27, Andre Burakovsky, Jared McCann, Vince Dunn, and Philipp Grubauer. Now, there's at least two of those players that I'm not sure that they will make it to their unrestricted free agent year, including Philipp Grubauer. So, and then, of course, restricted free agents after the 26-27 season, you have Shane Wright, Adam Larson, Brandon Montour, Joey Decord, Matty Beniers, and Chandler Stevenson. So we'll get into the particulars a little bit more, but I just want to look down the line because from what we're about to hear from Ron Francis, I think he wants to use draft capital to get the ball moving. I do think, though, that the Seattle Kraken are going to have to move more than just picks to get to where they want to be, where they need to be, especially if they're trying to get there by next season. Let's hear, though, now from Ron Francis. This is him talking after the trade deadline with regard to what the Seattle Kraken were able to do. And we'll break this down a little bit as we move forward on today's episode.
Moves we made, two of the three guys we moved were UFAs, and we're pleased with the return we got in those deals. So when you look at us, moving forward, that's 5 first-round picks in the next 3 drafts, 5 second-round picks in the next 3 drafts, so 10 picks. I'm not sitting here saying we're looking to draft 10 players. In a perfect world, we're looking to move some of these draft capital pieces to try and acquire players and move the process forward a little bit quicker. Obviously, we want to get healthy and hope that happens next year, but we have to look at things because obviously I felt going into the season we're a team that could compete for the playoff spot, and we're not there, so that's why we had to do the things we did. We want to get to the position where we're in the playoffs and competing. Yeah, no, we, a quick look, we're roughly 20 million or so in cap space available. We talked about the draft capital that we've acquired to do that too. So we're certainly looking at the free agent market, and we're certainly looking to see if there's any trades that teams want to make ahead of the draft, which is kind of the next point where a lot of trades seem to happen. So we'll be very active in that and trying to make our team better.
So I love to hear that the Seattle Kraken are expecting to be active. I've been asking for this for a while. It seems like we're finally going to get it, and it's needed. It's absolutely necessary because we keep hearing that this team, the Seattle Kraken team, they thought they were going to be more competitive than they actually are. We keep hearing from the front office, from ownership, that this leadership group thought this team was going to be more competitive than they are. I don't buy it completely. Yes, the injuries did not help the situation, but Philipp Grubauer, I don't know that I expected the fall to be so great, but there've been challenges with Philipp Grubauer. There've been challenges with Andre Burakovsky, who I don't think is having the same challenges, but he's certainly not the goal scorer that we expected and that we've needed him to be. There have been challenges and setbacks with Matty Beniers, Ty Kartye, who gives a little sandpaper, and we'll talk about that later on today's episode. But, again, I've said this a few times. Zame and I broke this down. I don't buy that this team should have been considered a shoo-in. When we did our preseason, I did see the Seattle Kraken vying for a playoff spot. I didn't see them being a top 3 team, but I didn't know the fall was going to be so mighty. So still a lot to figure out. But 10, I think I misspoke earlier. So it's 10 draft picks in the first and second round of the next 2 seasons. But those picks are going to be huge and can be utilized to make some moves. But as you also heard Ron Francis allude to, what the free agent market is going to look like. The Seattle Kraken now have not only draft capital, but they also have salary cap space upward of 20 million, as he said. We'll see what the cap is next year, but that's definitely those are some things to play around with. What I didn't offer in the clips that you just heard is that also the Seattle Kraken are very confident in what they have in the pipeline. That's always been a strong suit. Again, Zame and I broke that down on the last handful of episodes of Locked On Kraken. I don't think that the Seattle Kraken want to move any of those prospects. I think they're going to be looking to move, and they need to, quite honestly, move draft capital. So some of the picks that they've acquired and some veteran players, maybe with some term, who are not unrestricted free agents at the time that they're moved. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that again from Seattle, because this team wants to get and be more dynamic offensively. I do think that the Seattle Kraken believes they have some of that coming up in the pipeline. What they need are those bridge guys, but they are willing to spend a little bit more on them, is what I'm getting from some of the moves that the Seattle Kraken have made. And so in hindsight, and I know some people on our YouTube page have been saying this for a while, in hindsight, my gut is that the Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour deals won't really look that large in the coming years and coming seasons, because the Seattle Kraken are going to bring in, or want to be able to bring in, a cluster of more dynamic, prolific scorers. I mean, wouldn't be mad if we shored up some things on the defensive side as well. So we'll have to see. But another big thing is, where do we go with Philipp Grubauer? And speaking of Philipp Grubauer, though, I do get to wear the UMA hat, at least for one segment on today's episode, because Gruby got back between the pipes and the Seattle Kraken got back in the win column. We'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And they're a great snack to throw in a gym bag, to have at your desk, especially for someone like me that's on camera a lot, so you don't get hangry. And you're going to love cracking open every shell for a satisfying crunch in the in-shell option, which is the classic, and it is a favorite. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Hey, thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here. And, I'm really happy for Gruby. I'm happy that he got this win. He gets the win over Philadelphia. And, this was an interesting game. I was listening to this game as I was traveling back from a women's hockey event. So for those of you who listen to the Women's Hockey Report, part of the Locked On NHL channel, I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, had a great time. Definitely should go check that out. And I still have even more exclusive interviews with players, and we've got more coming up. So definitely check that out. But I've been saying it. I didn't want to see Philipp Grubauer go down as a paper transaction to the AHL. I'm using air quotes for our audio listeners. I didn't want to see that. I'm like, come on. If you're going to end this, which seems inevitable at this point, just end it. Don't play around. Don't futz around. Just end it. And I do think that's what we're going to see. Philipp Grubauer got the start and the win in Philadelphia. The first game of a back-to-back. We'll talk about the second game in a little bit, not in too much detail, but we'll talk about it a little bit. Spoiler alert, the Seattle Kraken still have trouble winning the second game of a back-to-back, but this was considered a quality start for Philipp Grubauer against Philadelphia. 23 saves on 24 shots, 1.1 goals against or goals above expected. This was a solid game for the Seattle Kraken, who win over Philadelphia 4-1. Shot quality just a scotch better, just a touch better for the Seattle Kraken. They outshot Philadelphia 32-24, and they really started pouring it on. It seemed like it was going to be a tight game early on, and then, things just heat up for the Kraken, and you love to see it. Kartye got the first goal for the Seattle Kraken. The first goal of the second period, Matty Beniers gets on the board. Chandler Stevenson shorthanded, which I love for so many reasons, because I do give this man a lot of grief for his defense or lack thereof. And then Brandon Montour also scores in this game. The Seattle Kraken were 0 for 3 on the power play, but were 5 for 5 on the penalty kill. Hits were 21 for Philadelphia, 13 for the Seattle Kraken. And face-offs, 53.2% for the Kraken as opposed to 46.8% for Philadelphia. Here's what Alison Lukan had to say about this game. Now, she notes that Philipp Grubauer was in net for both wins over the Flyers, and in this game, as I mentioned, prevented 1.1 more goals than expected, earning his 7th quality start of the season. Beniers with the game-winning goal just broke that down. Now, we did see Mikey Eyssimont, who was a part of that trade with Tampa Bay. He was on a line with John Hayden and Kartye, who did return to the lineup. You'll love to see that. But all the Kraken forward combos, the combo that was most effective, as we've seen for a handful of games here, was Beniers, Schwartz, and Capo Caco, plus 13 in shot attempts, 66% of all shot quality in just under 11 minutes of ice time. The Seattle Kraken had 9 rush chances while allowing just 2. They did struggle, though, Allison notes, in terms of puck management, allowing 11 chances against off of turnovers. Don't love the turnovers, but getting out in transition or being able to get those rush chances, which effectively is transition. I liked that we saw that in this game, and I think we also saw it against Washington. So that was good overall. This was a strong outing and a needed, necessary outing from the Seattle Kraken. They did fall short against Washington, but we'll break that down. Game score, Beniers, Montour, Kartye, love to see it. Vince Dunn and Larson were your highest regarding game score per hockeystatscards.com. Shot attempts leader was Brandon Montour, who's been getting after it. You'll love to see it. Here's what Philipp Grubauer had to say after this game and this win.
Yeah, tough to get into it a little bit, to be honest. Haven't played in a long time in this league, so it's definitely different pace, different game up here than it is down there. But guys helped me out a ton, blocked a lot of shots, so happy to be back. Happy to get the win. Yeah, I mean, it stayed the same. Obviously, as a goalie, you want to play, but it's the same approach. I think I've played long enough that if you lose a game or 2 or 3, and the way this season has been going, nothing changes in my preparation, and I know what I can do out there. And sometimes it's luck, and sometimes you depend on your teammates, and sometimes you need to be there for your teammates. And it was nice to go down there, play a couple games, get into a rhythm, and carry that momentum kind of up here.
So that's Philipp Grubauer. I almost forgot to, get my UMA hat going here. But for Philipp, I will wear the game-winning hat, the hat that I wear when we win games. Either way, this is for you, Philipp. I love to see Gruby having a bounce back. Once again, you heard him say it's tough to get a rhythm, especially at the speed of the NHL when you're not playing games. And we're going to talk about Joey Daccord a little bit here. I do think there's a scenario where the Seattle Kraken might just want to give Philipp Grubauer a few more starts here. This season, we're not going to the playoffs. Joey Daccord looks tired. He is I just don't like how Joey is looking right now. And if Philipp wants looks, and if we want to offload Philipp Grubauer, then maybe we give him some starts. Give him some starts. We're going to see some young guys come up We are going to, this is what we heard from Ron Francis. We are going to expect Yanni Neiman to come up at some point in time. Um, you know, this is the time. Just give Philipp the starts. He wants more starts. He needs repetition. Joey needs a break. If it's not anything physical, just emotionally, mentally, this has been a tough go for this team and for Joey Dax. And he looks a little bit out of it right now. I mean, am I the only one? Let me know. Question of the day. Do you like how Joey's looking in net right now? I know I'm skipping ahead a little. We're not actually going to talk about Joey Daccord too much, but you got a good game from Philipp Grubauer. You didn't send him down to the AHL for a paper transaction. So let the guy get starts. Let the guy just get some starts. Come on. He played well. He was in the zone. The ESPN broadcast was wild. Was absolutely wild. I'll just say this. I'm glad that on my airplane, the I was able to get Wi-Fi and switch over to the radio broadcast because Everett and Al are fantastic. It was great to hear their energy always. But before the Kraken got going, you were hearing them compliment Philipp Grubauer and were wanting the Seattle Kraken to really ramp it up a little. By the time the Kraken did, I was already listening to the radio broadcast. And again, there were some words used on that broadcast that I just can't get behind. I'm not explaining it. If you know where I'm coming from, you know. But yeah, this was a good game from Philipp Grubauer. Also a good game from Kartye. And we've seen the emergence of Jordan Eberle. And I believe it's Bob Condor who's been asking a lot, hey, so he's back, but what does that look like? What does that mean? Especially, again, coming off of a very unique injury. So to close out the show, I want to focus on Kartye and Jordan Eberle because their journeys and their paths back to the NHL, not the same, but I do think will be critical for this last gasp of the season for the Seattle Kraken. So we're going to talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Factor. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your style, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or even keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. And I love the opportunity to get healthy, curated meals without having to stress. The meal planning is done for you. And I love Protein Plus. I also sometimes do keto just because of some of the other dietary preferences I have. Keto tends to lean towards that way. And the convenience is unbeatable. No prep, no mess, just great food in minutes. And it comes right to your door. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off and use code, I know it's a long one, locked on NHL50OFF to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. I mean, I know I love free shipping. That's code locked on NHL 50 off at factormeals.com/locked on NHL50OFF to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, Seattle hockey fans, we got the win in Philadelphia, and then on a back-to-back, Joey Daccord in net for the game in Washington. Of course, Ovechkin is on his quest to not just match, but best the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Spoiler alert, he does get a goal in this game. I will also tell you he did not score on Joey Daccord, because he got an empty net goal. So there you go. But this game, and we'll hear from Eberle a little bit, this was actually a pretty solid game from the Seattle Kraken. If you look, they were able to score first. Shane Wright, oh my gosh. The passing in this game is what I want to see from the Seattle Kraken. Even with no more Oliver Bjorkstrand, as much as I love the maestro, Shane Wright from Larson and Burakovsky. Burakovsky with that primary assist. Beautiful, hezzy, kind of fakes the shot. Shane Wright and so many players, including Eberle, who we'll talk about here, ready sticks. I talked about transition or on the rush when I did the recap in the last segment. We have been seeing more of this. Small sample size, these two back-to-back games. And I love that we're seeing in a back-to-back scenario that the Seattle Kraken are creating rush chances. Too many times the Seattle Kraken didn't have transition this season. And even if they did, it was more of a breakaway than an odd man rush scenario of any kind. So I loved that in this game. Beautiful goal by Shane Wright. Beautiful goal by Eberle. And then things got a little cray-cray. Now, there was a fight or a skirmish. It was kind of silly nonsense. Lots of guys, for those not watching on YouTube, I'm kind of covering my microphone here. Lots of headlocks. Ty Kartye did get a little bit of the business. He was a goal scorer in that Philadelphia game. But he's Pepper Pot Part 2. He's got some sandpaper. He's got the P&V. That's why it was so important for him to get that reset and come back all cylinders firing. Speaking of Ty Kartye, let's hear from him, and then we'll also hear from Eberle. I told you there are a lot of things I liked about this game. Didn't go the Kraken's way. So first, let's hear from Ty Kartye about his return to the NHL, what he's expecting, what the reset was like for him. Then we'll hear from Jordan Eberle about a little bit of the pangs of not being able to get it done in Washington.
Yeah, felt good. Obviously played a couple games in Coachella, so that was good. And then, coming back was just hoping to help the team out, and I'm glad we performed like we did today. I think sometimes when you're getting scratched a little bit, you might lose a little confidence, and you're not touching the puck as much, so the games become a little more difficult. But it was nice to get down there, and obviously they played me a lot and let me get my little bit of confidence back and feel the puck again, and just play well and hope that it transfers back up here, and I think it did.
I love what we heard there from Ty. That's exactly what the Seattle Kraken, Dan Bylsma, and his coaching staff have wanted from these resets. I get the sense, again, this wasn't like the Bjorkstrand one earlier, maybe the Burakovsky one, and also those are more veterans. We're a little bit more of like, we're sending a message. The resets have truly been that. Conversations with young guys. I think, Bylsma saw the writing on the wall pretty early on. He needs the young bucks, and I do think that's why he was given this job, is to get the young guys, the prospects that are making that transition into the NHL, to get them NHL ready. And in a season like this, where you do have a little bit of flexibility to give Ty Kartye that time, you give it to him. Because if the moves that are coming down the pipeline are what I think they're going to be, there's a few different scenarios for a player like a Ty Kartye. Either he's going to have to battle for a position in training camp, and Ron Francis alluded to some of that. Training camp, wanting to be highly competitive, make us make difficult decisions, something akin to that, he said. Either you're going to have to battle it out in training camp, you go back to the AHL, or you find yourself on another team. And I think there's promise for Ty Kartye. I really do. So I like this reset for him. I like the reset for the Seattle Kraken. And this is the time where we're going to see the Seattle Kraken get more experimental. And like I said in the last segment, I don't see why you don't just give Philipp Grubauer a few more starts. Joey Daccord looks gassed to me. Honestly, he looks really, really gassed. Again, question of the day, does Joey look a little tired and fatigued to you? Let me know in the comments, especially if you're listening on YouTube. If you are listening audio, then hit me up on Blue Sky. That's where I'm most active. eLindsay08. dot bsky dot social. So yeah, we need the young bucks. We're going to see more of them come up. The Seattle Kraken on Monday today had the day off, but they do have 2 home games. So it's Montreal and the Utah hockey team. So Montreal and Utah come into town and Winnipeg. So the return, quick turnaround, but the return of Brandon Tanev over the weekend. I like that Kartye got that goal. He seems in good spirits. Great conversation. This was a loss though for the Seattle Kraken. Again, playoffs not a thing for the Seattle Kraken, but I liked that the captain still felt again that pain of seeing this team do some of the right things. And even, he alludes to not even it being able to get it to overtime was hard. Let's hear what Eberle had to say.
Yeah, I mean, anytime the puck goes in the net, it's gets you confidence. I think prior to that, it's just trying to get the timing back and get your speed back. I think you missed that many games. It's not easy coming back, but I feel like I'm up to speed. I just get some fluidity with some line mates too, which is nice. Yeah, I mean, it stings. I think we played well enough to at least come away with a point, get it to OT. Yeah, I like to compete. I like the battle. I like that. But ultimately, I mean, you play. That's a good team, but you want to come ahead. That's just it stings regardless. I like the guys sticking up for each other. I think that's important. That shows team camaraderie. I think that's kind of the stuff we've talked about over the last little bit about what we need, and saw that tonight.
A mixed bag there, but I like that he's still saying, hey, this stings, this stings to not get over the hump, to not get it done. And that's why he's the captain. Oh man. Come on. Everydayers, OGers, I've been advocating for Captain Eberle for a while. The only other guy that I wanted to see in that position was Jaden Schwartz, but Eberle's the better choice for a more vocal captain. Schwartz is a leader on this team, regardless, through and through and through. We saw that he's had his fair share of injuries or time away from the team, but anytime one of our big guns or vocal leaders is out, Eberle steps up, or excuse me, it's Jaden Schwartz who steps up with his play. He lets his game speak for itself. And so I love the combo of Eberle and Schwartz. I laid that out earlier in today's episode. Going to have to make some decisions regarding them. And I don't know that we'll know the answer there just yet until we see how Ron Francis and company decide to move these assets that they got at the trade deadline. But we are going to have quite a time as the playoffs march on once again without the Seattle Kraken. So we'll have plenty of time to break this down, talk it all through, hopefully have some guests help us analyze all of this. And of course, get ready for the draft. And on the other side of the draft, get ready for free agency. Oh, be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. And loud and proud, we always say, we've got a handful of games at home. So you'll be at CPA. Let's go Kraken. Hold fast. Stay true. Let's go Kraken. And I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.